Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of DotaAlchemy.com, and this is going to be part of the Ganking video series. And in this video, I'm going to be covering counter-ganking. So, first and foremost, I want to explain the difference between counter-ganking and baiting. Baiting is more of an aggressive thing, and the purpose is kind of to get kills, but sometimes counter-ganking can just secure you a game because the enemy team wasted so much time going for a particular gank and they just didn't get enough value out of it. So when you're doing a bait, you're essentially looking to gain value. When you're doing a counter-gank, you're looking to stop the enemy team from gaining value. So counter-ganking is a little bit risky in Dota these days. So as you can see in this game, we have a Nyx Assassin that's going for a bit of a solo play, and we have a counter-gank coming from LGD. Obviously, they're versus Mineski in this game. This is part of the Super Major, just to give you a bit of context. But counter-ganking is a little bit more risky these days than just going for bait plays and ganking yourself, because you're going to be on your side of the map when you're going for these counter-ganks. So if they fail, you can lose objectives. And if you are in an even game, you know, you lose a couple of these engagements, all of a sudden you lost the game. But the scenario in which you want to counter gank is typically when you have a better late game lineup by far than the enemy team does. So if we take a look at Mineski's heroes versus LGD's heroes here, we have a Marana core, a Lina core who has been adequately shut down, and a Timber core who has also been shut down. So three kind of decent late game cores, but they're also kind of snowbally. They need to snowball or else they're not that good. Lycan, Shadow Fiend, and Bloodseeker are all pretty strong cores in the late game, even if they're just having kind of a normal game. So it's pretty clear that in this game, LGD is able to just go to the late game and they're going to win the game pretty easily at that point, as long as Mineski isn't snowballing really hard. So given the situation that they're in with a bit of a gold lead, LGD is really happy smoking onto their side of the map. So if you look at the way that they're moving here on the Shadow Fiend and the Bane, they smoked from the middle lane and they're heading up to the top lane through their own jungle, because it looks like with the positioning of Mineski here, you cannot see them on the map, and there might be people sitting behind this Timber because he's playing up, and that's just typically a way that people play around the Timber saw. So they're kind of counter-ganking to the, okay, we think that Mineski is going to potentially be pushing behind this Timber into this tier 1 here. They're going to go for the kind of gank to an objective thing, so let's counter-gank it, because we know that if we just go late game and we survive, that's all we need to do, we're going to win the game. That's exactly what LGD is thinking. But they run into the Nyx Assassin, which is still a bit of a counter-gank because Nyx is ganking. So they have sentries ready. They place the sentry on Bane, and they go for a grip on the Nyx Assassin. It's a really easy kill. And a lot of the time you might think, okay, that was a good play from the Nyx Assassin, right? You know, he stopped that smoke. Timber is fine. It's just a support. Who cares? But really, this is okay, because anything to stop the snowball of Mineski is going to be really, really effective. And even if that's just killing a support who's looking for a pickoff in the jungle, because all LGD needs to do is to stall out that game so that it goes to the late game, and they're going to win very, very easily. So that's why you'd want to counter gank. There's a couple of things that you can focus on when you want to look to counter gank. One of the main things is you want to itemize in order to counter gank. If you know that, okay, let's say you have an Alchemist, you have an Anti-Mage, you know that you're going to win the game by just protecting that hero, then you can go into that kind of counter ganking mode. Let's just not look for, you know, ganks on our own. Let's counter gank to this Anti-Mage, and that's how we're going to secure the game. So you want to itemize. Buying sentries in this particular case, where there's this Nyx Assassin, buying sentries is a good way to counter gank instead of dust. Well, dust is good too, but you know, having those sentries, because you want to place them in your own jungle, sentries are kind of the more defensive choice. So the Bane opting to be more defensive with the item pickups is definitely good in this case, because like I said, they have way better late game. Glimmer Cape is really good against a lot of these magic damage ganking heroes. Eul Scepter is great against Axe, a lot of these initiators. In some games, you can just win by itemizing to protect your team, and then all you need to do is go late game, and it's just easy. Another thing that you can do to counter gank, let's say, like I said, you have an Anti-Mage and Alchemist, a hero you want to focus on protecting them and just making sure they get to their power spike. You can position around your hero that is the win condition. So like I said, Anti-Mage, Alchemist. Sometimes certain heroes are a focus at different times during a game as well. For instance, in this game, they had a Lycan who was getting very, very focused by Mineski early, and as a result, they protected the Lycan. But then, realizing that the Shadow Fiend was going to transition into the focus because he was a lot easier to kill than the Lycan, and Shadow Fiend, just a bit more of kind of the mid to late game snowball hero, Mineski knew that they needed to focus the Shadow Fiend, which is why the Nyx was running through the jungle, and LGD had a really good response to that. So sometimes you need to itemize to protect from certain heroes. Let's say you need a Glimmer against Lina, but then instead of protecting the Lycan in the early game, you're going to want to move to protect the Shadow Fiend. So it's important to recognize if you're trying to counter gank and you know you win late game, what hero you need to protect at what time, and it really just depends on what hero's power spike comes at what point. So Lycan comes first, Shadow Fiend kind of becomes more vulnerable, they can't stop the Lycan, you know they're going to try to stop the SF, you protect the SF. And then also, you need to think specifically about how the enemy team, with their heroes, is going to stop your team from hitting that power spike, and focus on counter-ganking that. And then also, the last thing that I think you need to think about is that a lot of the time, you need to have a healthy balance of both counter-ganking and space creation when you have one of these heroes on your team that has a really good power spike, or when you know that you have way stronger late game, so your 3 cores are just way stronger than their cores in the late game. A lot of the time you still do need heroes creating space, because otherwise you might actually not be able to get to that late game just by virtue of there not being enough gold on the map that is safe to take. So in this game, for example, Bloodseeker and Lycan started playing really aggressively when SF wanted to farm. SF gets some items, and all of a sudden SF looks to fight. Bloodseeker goes into that farming mode. So it's really important in a particular game, even if you know that you have the better late game, you don't just counter gank. You need to have some heroes creating space, because not every hero can just be sitting behind and counter ganking or taking farm while other people are counter ganking them, because of course there's not enough gold on the map for that to happen. So it's very important to recognize who needs to have the kill potential at a certain point based on items, based on spell timings and things like that. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in another video.